Hello children, in this video we'll discuss about cache memory in computers and laptops. What is the importance of cache memory? What is the typical size of cache memory? And what are the different levels of cache memory that you find inside the computers? So before that, let us see different memories that we see inside our computers. So first memory that can see inside the computer is the non-volatile kind of memory like a hard disk drive. So typical rotation speed of this type of hard disk drive is 5400 or 7200 RPM. That means compared to our processor speed, hard disk speed is very low. So maximum data transfer speed is 80 to 150 Mbps. But if you see the clock speed of CPU, it is the range of 1 GHz to 4 GHz. So even though your processor is capable to accept the data in much higher speed, but it cannot get the data through the hard disk drive with the same rate. So we need a memory in between to avoid this speed mismatch. So that memory is called random access memory. RAM is faster than your hard disk drive. RAM can provide data to CPU much faster than hard disk drive, but still RAM is slower than the clock speed of CPU or processor. Typical RAM speed is 400 MHz to 800 MHz. Still the speed is low compared to the clock speed of CPU. But if you see the newer generation RAM like DDR3, DDR4, they can operate much faster rate like normal RAM like 1600 MHz to 2000 above megahertz. This is almost faster like your CPU clock speed. So we can think that this newer generation RAM can supply data to CPU much faster than your hard disk. But no, the reason is nowadays the processors are not come with single core processors, but they are multi-core processors like dual core, octa core, etc. If all these cores are transfer data at a time, this RAM speed is not sufficient to deliver the data to all the cores at the same time. So here comes our next memory, cache. Cache memory is fastest among all other memories. So cache is also a RAM but special kind of RAM which is called static RAM. It is quite fast and its size ranges from kilobytes to megabytes. So the data which is frequently used by the CPU is saved in the cache memory. So it's easy for the processor or CPU to get the data very fastly and also easy to access. So now let's see in detail what are the different types of cache memories. So the first one is level 1 cache or L1 cache. This is a tiny amount of memory, cache memory is inside the CPU itself. That means it is integrated inside the CPU. So they can operate at the same speed of CPU. And this level 1 cache is the fastest cache memory and the memory size varies 2 KB to 64 KB. And level 1 cache again classified into two types, instruction cache and data cache. All the instructions are saved in the instruction cache memory. All the data are saved in the data cache memory. Next cache is level 2 cache or L2 cache. This type of L2 cache memory can see either inside or outside the CPU. And L2 either separate for each core of the CPU or it will share one L2 cache will share for all the core of the CPU. If it is outside, it's connected with a high speed bus with the CPU. So data transfer speed will be more, and its memory size is 256 KB to 512 KB. It will vary 256 to 512 KB, but this is slower than L1 cache. Next is level 3 cache memory or L3 cache memory. This type of cache memory, L3 cache memory, we can't see in all kind of processors. Only some higher end processors are using this L3 cache memory. And L3 cache memory always placed outside the CPU, and L3 cache shared among all the cores of the CPU, and the memory size can expect 1 MB to 8 MB, but this is slower than L1 and L2 cache. So now I hope you all can understand what kind of memories we can see inside the laptops and computers. So now let's see the process flow. Suppose if CPU want any information, how the CPU will take the information from these kind of memories. First, CPU need any information. It will search first L1 cache. If it is there, it will take from the L1 cache, or it will check in the L2 cache or in L3 cache. If the data or information did not get from the cache memory, it is called cache miss. Or if it available from the cache memory, if the data available from the cache memory, it's known as cache hit. Okay, then if the data CPU didn't get the data from the cache memory, it will automatically search the RAM memory, random access memory. If it is not there in random access memory, the data will available from the hard disk. Suppose if we open a document in first time, it won't be available in the cache memory. So the CPU should search and get the information from the hard disk. But frequently used data or informations or documents, it will save in the cache memory. So the CPU can access from the cache memory very fastly. No need to search the RAM and hard disk. So this is the process flow of the CPU. To conclude, the clock speed of the CPU is very high compared to our normal RAM and hard disk. To avoid the speed mismatch of these two, we are using cache memory in between. So now you can ask, cache memory is very high speed memory, but why it is available only in a megabyte size? The reason is cache memory is much costlier than any other memory. That's why very small amount of cache memory is available in all the laptops and desktops. So once you purchase a laptop or desktop for your use, not only concentrate the hard disk size or RAM size, but definitely you should ask about the cache memory size, because the cache memory size will decide the overall performance of your computer. And the same process flow is also applicable for your smartphones also.